Okay, greetings one and all, and welcome to this math lesson. In this lesson, we will be looking at the topic linear equations. Linear equations. Let's begin. Okay, let's consider this question here. We have the equation 2h plus 5 equals to 27. This is indeed a linear equation because the highest power of our variable h, the highest power of h is 1. And so we have 2h plus 5 equals to 27. Notice that we don't have no x, we don't have no h squared, we don't have no h to the third power or h to the fourth power. So that's why this is a linear equation. So this is h to the power of 1. At any rate, we have 2h plus 5 equals to 27. How are we going to solve this linear equation? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to send the 5 over to the equal sign. Now, when we send the 5 over the equal sign, it was a positive 5, and so now it becomes a negative 5. And so we have 27 minus 5, and on this side, we just have 2h. The idea is that we want to isolate the h. We want the h on one side and everything else on the other side. And so that's why we would move the 5 over the equal sign. What is 27 minus 5? Well, 27 minus 5 is definitely 22. Again, we want to only have the h on one side. And so since we have 2h, what we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by h. And so we divide 2h by h and we divide 22 by h. Here, these 2's are going to cancel out each other. And so when they cancel each other, we just have h equals to 22 divided by 2 is 11. So the answer is definitely 11. So h equals 11. What do? We divide both sides by 2. And we had to divide by the coefficient of h. So we divide both sides by 2. So when we divide both sides by 2, we divide 2h by 2. We divide 22 by 2. And so we are left with just h equals to 22 divided by 2, which is 11. So the answer is h equals to 11. Moving right along, we have a next question here. We have another linear equation. We have 3m minus 5 equals to m plus 8. The idea is that we want all of the m's on one side and all of the numbers on the other side so that we can isolate m and just have m on one side and everything else on the other side. And so we're going to send the negative 5 over the equal sign. Notice that it was a negative 5. And when we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a positive 5. And so it's going to be, send this over, it's going to be positive 5. And when we send this over, it was a positive m. But when we send it over the equal sign, it's going to be a negative m. So it's going to be, we send that over, that's positive 5. We send this over, that's going to be negative m. So we have 3m minus m equals to 8 plus 5. And so we subtract 3m minus m is going to be 2m. And 8 plus 5, well, 8 plus 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 is 13. And so we have 2m equals to 13. What are we going to do here? We're going to divide both sides by the coefficient of m, which is 2. So we divide both sides by 2. And so we have 2m all over 2 and 13 divided by 2. And what we're going to do here, we're going to cancel out. These 2's are going to cancel each other. And so we're just left with m equals to 13 over 2. But what is 13 divided by 2? Well, 13 divided by 2, we perform the operation here. How many times can 2 go into 13? Well, 2 times 6 is 12. And so we subtract 12. We subtract 13 and 12. And 13 minus 12 is 1. And notice that we have a decimal point. And so the reason why we put the decimal point up top is because the decimal point gives us permission to put an imaginary 0 here. And so we say, how many times can 2 go into 10? Well, 2 goes into 10 5 times. So we have 2 times 5, which is 10. And so we have 10 minus 10, and 10 minus 10 is 0. And so that's why we have 6.5. Remember, we put the decimal point here because after 3, there's no more numbers to bring down. And so we put the point here so that we can have permission to put an imaginary 0 and so that we can continue the division. All right. And so we have m equals to 6.5. Okay, moving right along, we have another question here. We have another linear equation. We have 12q minus 1 equals to 35. This is a negative 1. So when we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a positive 1. Again, this is negative 1. We send over the equal sign, it becomes positive 1. This is 35 plus 1. And so we bring down the 12q. What is 35 plus 1? Well, 35 plus 1 is definitely 36. And so we say 12q equals to 36. Now we want to get rid of this 12. And so we have to divide both sides by 12. So we divide this side by 12 and we divide that side by 12. What is 12 divided by 12? Well, those two numbers, they can cancel each other. And so we are left with just Q, because on this side, the 12 and the 12 cancel out each other. So we just left with Q on this side. But we still have 36 divided by 12. And 36 divided by 12 is definitely 3, because 3 times 12 is 36. So the answer here is Q equals to 3. Moving right along, we have another linear equation. We have 5p minus 13 equals 42. Notice that here we have negative 13. And when we send the negative 13 over the equal sign, it becomes a positive 13. And so we have 42 plus 13. Now, 42 plus 13, if you add them together, you will get 55. And so we have 5p equals to 55. What are we going to do here? Well, we have to divide both sides by 5. And so what that means is we're going to divide 5p by 5, and we're going to divide 55 by 5. So the 5s are going to cancel out each other, leaving us just with p. And so we have p equals to 55 over 5. Now, what is 55 divided by 5? Well, 55 divided by 5 is definitely 11. And so the answer is p is equal to 11. Moving right along, we have 3h plus 4 equals to 13. And so the idea here is that we want to ensure that h is on one side. We want to isolate h. We want to make sure that h is on one side and everything else is on the other side. And so we send the 4 over the equal sign. It was a positive 4. When we send it over, it becomes a negative 4. And so we have 3h equals to 13 minus 4. What is 13 minus 4? Well, 13 minus 4 is definitely 9. And so what we're going to do here, we're going to divide both sides by 3. And if we divide both sides by 3, well, the 3's cancel each other. So we cancel out. And so we're just left with h. h equals to 9 over 3. And 9 divided by 3 is definitely 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. And so the answer is h is equal to 3. Moving right along, we have this question. It says 3c plus 8 equals to 20. And so we have 3c plus 8 equals to 20. This is another linear equation. We're going to send the 8 over the equal sign. Remember, it is a positive 8. When we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a negative 8. And so now we have 20 minus 8. 20 minus 8 is definitely 12. And we have 3c equals to 12. What are we going to do? We're going to divide both sides by 3. We're dividing by the coefficient of c, which is 3. And so we know that 3 and 3, they're going to cancel out each other, leaving us with just the c. And then we have 12 over 3. Well, what is 12 over 3? 12 over 3 is just 12 divided by 3, and 12 divided by 3 is definitely 4, because 4 times 3 is 12. And so the answer here is c equals to 4. Moving right along, we have x plus 6 equals to 19. And so the idea is that we want to make sure that x is on one side. We want to isolate x, put x on one side and everything else on the other side of the equation. And so we take the 16 and we send it over the equal sign. And so we have x is equal to 19 minus 16. And so it was a positive 16. When we send it over, it becomes a negative 16. So 19 minus 6 is 3. 19 minus 16 rather is 3. And so our answer is x equals to 3. And that's our final answer here. Moving right along, we have 5m minus 3 equals to 2m plus 9. The idea is that we want all of the m's on one side and all of the numbers on the other side. And so that means that we're going to send 2m over the equal sign to the left, and we're going to send the negative 3 to the right. Notice that this was a negative 3. So when we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a positive 3. And notice that this is a positive 2m. So when we send it over, it becomes a negative 2m. What is 5 minus 2m? Well, 5 minus 2m is definitely 3m. And what is 9 plus 3? Well, 9 plus 3 is definitely 12. And so we have 3m equals to 12. Now, in case you didn't get it, let's start from the top one more time. So we have 5m minus 3 equals to 2m plus 9. Notice that we send the negative 3 over the equal sign. And because it was negative 3, when we send over the equal sign, it becomes positive 3. And we have the 2m. When we send over the equal sign, it becomes negative 2m. We know that 5m minus 3m is We know that 5m minus 2m is 3m, and we know that 9 plus 3 is 12. So we have 3m equals to 12. So what are we going to do here? Well, we have to divide both sides by 3 because 3 is the coefficient of m. And so if we divide both sides by 3, notice that 3 divided by 3, we're going to cancel them out. And we are left with 12 divided by 3. What is 12 divided by 3? Well, 12 divided by 3 is definitely 4. And the reason why 12 divided by 3 is 4 is because 4 times 3 is 12. And so the answer here is m equals to 4. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Here we have, this is another linear equation. We have 4p minus 8 equals to 12. And so the idea here is that we want to make sure that the negative 8 goes over the equal sign. And so when we send over the negative 8, it was a negative 8. And so when we send over the equal sign, it becomes a positive 8. And so we are left with 4p equals to 12 plus 8. Now, what is 12 plus 8? Well, 12 plus 8 is definitely 20. And so we have 4p equals to 20. Now, what do we do? Well, at this point, we're going to divide both sides by 4. And so we have 4p divided by 4, and we have 20 divided by 4. Now, when we divide 4p by 4, notice that we can cancel out these two 4s, and we are just left with p. And so we have p equals to 20 divided by 4. And what is 20 divided by 4? Well, 20 divided by 4 is simply 5 because 4 times 5 is 20. And so our answer here is p equals to 5. Let's move on to the next question. Here we have 4g plus 6 equals to 34. Again, 4g plus 6 equals to 34. And the idea is that we want to isolate g. We want the variable on one side, that is we want the letter on one side and everything else on the other side. And so we're going to send over the positive 6. Now it was a positive 6, but since we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a negative 6. And so we have 34 minus 6, which is 28. And we have 4g equals to 28. Now here we have to divide both sides by the coefficient of g, which is 4. So we have to divide both sides by 4. Dividing both sides by 4, we cancel out these two. So 4 and 4 cancel. So we're just left with 28 divided by 4. And 28 divided by 4 is definitely 7. So g equals to 7, and that's our answer here. Moving right along, we have we have another linear equation. Now, even though we have a fraction involved, it's still a linear equation. And it looks different than the rest. So we're gonna do something different that we haven't been doing with the other ones, because this one is a little different. Notice that we have x over 5, and this equals to 7. But 7, we can just write 7 as 7 over 1, because any whole number can be written as a fraction just by putting 1 over it, because 7 over 1 is still 7. So we have x over 5 equals to 7 over 1, and that's the same thing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply. So that's the technique for this one. You want to cross multiply. So we're going to say 5 multiplied by 7. And we want to say 1 multiplied by x. And so let's multiply those two things. 5 multiplied by 7. Again, 5 multiplied by 7 and 1 multiplied by x. So we have x multiplied by 1 and 5 multiplied by 7. Now, what is x multiplied by 1 or 1 multiplied by x? That's the same thing as x. And what is 5 times 7? Well, 5 times 7 is definitely 35. And so the answer is 35. X equals to 35. Now let's move on to the next question. Here we have 3d plus 6 equals to 18. The idea is that we want to isolate our variable. We want our letter on one side and everything else on the other side. And so we're going to send the 6 over the equal sign. And so notice that this was positive 6. And when we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a negative 6. And so we have 18 minus 6. What is 18 minus 6? Well, 18 minus 6 is definitely 12. Again, 18. If you perform that calculation, 18 minus 6 is definitely 12. And so we have 3d equals to 12. And so notice here we want to divide both sides by the coefficient of d, which is 3. And so if we divide 3d by 3, and if we divide 12 by 3, if we do that, 3d divided by 3 is definitely going to cancel these. 3d divided by 3 is definitely just d. And 12 divided by 3 is definitely 4. So the answer is d equals to 4. And that's our answer. Moving right along, we have 5d minus 8 equals to 32. And so what we want to do here, we have negative 8. And so the idea is that since we have a negative 8, we're going to send that over the equal sign. And so negative 8, when we send over the equal sign, becomes positive 8. And so we have 32 plus 8. And so we have 5d equals to 32 plus 8. Notice that we have to add 32 plus 8 is 40. And so here we have 5d equals to 40. What are we going to do here? Well, we're going to divide both sides by 5. And because 5 is the coefficient of d. And so let's do that. Let's divide both sides by 5. If we divide 5d by 5, notice here we're going to cancel out these two. And so we're just left with d. And we know that 40 divided by 5 is definitely 8 because 8 times 5 is 40. And so the answer here is d equals to 8. Moving right along, we have another linear equation. We have 3h minus 5 equals to 19. And so the idea is that we want the variable on one side or the letter on one side and everything else on the other side. So that means that the 5 has to go on the other side. So we send the 5 over the equal sign. It was a negative 5. When we send it over, it becomes a positive 5. And so we have 3h equals to 19 plus 5. 19 plus 5 is definitely 24 because if you add 19 plus 5, you get 24. And so we have 3h equals to 24. And so here we want to divide both sides by the coefficient of h, which is 3. Now, what is 3h divided by 3? And what is 24 divided by 3? Well, 3h divided by 3, we can cancel out the 3's. And so we're just left with h. h equals to 24 over 3. And 24 divided by 3 is definitely 8. And so that means that h is equal to 8. Moving right along, we have the next linear equation. So we got 8 for this one. This one, here we have 2m plus 8 equals to 56. So what we want to do here, well, the idea is that we want to isolate the variable. We want the letter on one side and everything else on the other side. And so with that in mind, we want to send over the positive 8. Notice here that it was a positive 8. But when we send it over the equal sign, it becomes a negative 8. And so we have 2m equals to 56 minus 8. What is 56 minus 8? Well, 56 minus 8 is definitely 48. And so we have 2m equals to 48. Here, we want to divide both sides by the coefficient of m, which is 2. And so we have 2m divided by 2 equals to 48 divided by 2. And so what we're going to do, we want to divide both sides by 2. So we're going to cancel. So we cancel those two. And so m is equal to 48 divided by 2. What is 48 divided by 2? Well, 48 divided by 2 is definitely 24. And so the answer here is m is equal to 24. Okay, that brings us to the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.